No, you can't. But wouldn't it be cool if you did? What is up, ghouls, gamers, and goblins? PotatoBagel here. Lately, I've been obsessed with Pokemon TCG Pocket. I love building decks and testing them out, but that's not why we're here. Did you know that burned is listed as a status condition within the game? Like, for real. In the menu, you can read about the different status conditions, and burned is one of them. Same thing with confusion. There's actually a status in the game that can make your attack fail on a coin flip, which is insane and probably game changing. Today, I'll go over these status conditions, not just what they do, but my thoughts on how they could be changed. I don't just mean burned and confusion, but all the listed status conditions. Yes, I know that the TCG is a real physical game and these are probably copy and pasted from that, but hey, I do what I want. Let's start with the title of the video, Burned. Currently, burned Pokemon take 20 damage during the checkup and recover on a coin flip. Now, by itself, this isn't, inherently a bad thing. But down the line, I think this is gonna wanna be changed, mostly because just judging by the title, burned, it's gonna be something that is mainly mostly exclusive to the fire types. Maybe a few psychic cards from some of those ghost types, and maybe a couple dark ones. I could see something like Houndoom maybe eventually being a thing. So here's my idea. If we reduce the damage to 10 per turn and don't, utilize the checkup as a recovery, so no coin flip, it can only be cured by evolving or retreating. Then what we can do is add the effect that parallels, the mainline games, and that is decreasing the damage dealt. In the main games, burned halves the damage done by physical attacks. Obviously, the physical, special split, that type of stuff isn't existent in the card game. But what we could do is decrease the damage dealt by 20. With the way cards are laid out, their weaknesses add an additional 20 damage, and I think this is a great way to, mitigate that. The effect is already relevant on something like Cloyster and Melmetal. It's already there, it's already pre-existing, but having it be a status condition adds great, offense as a defensive mechanic. And I think that's something that the fire types need. A lot of the fire types are hyper reliant on Blaine or Moltres EX. And I think that by, putting this on another card, we can maybe get more of a box standard fire deck that doesn't use some of these, specific cards. Maybe we can actually see like Salazzle be put in a deck or something. Now, on to sleep and paralysis. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a fan of these. Like, they're basically the exact same condition. Sleep prevents attacking and retreating and is recoverable on a coin flip. And paralysis prevents both attacking and retreating, but always ends at the end of the following turn. This makes no sense why these would be different. The only thing that this is ever going to change is how they are applied, which means that every single electric type that inflicts paralysis has to do it on a coin flip, and every single Pokemon that puts something to sleep is guaranteed sleep, and then does coin flip after. Like, it's just an unnecessary level of detail and separation that makes no sense. So instead, what if we did something like paralysis prevents retreating only, and then sleep prevents attacking only? Then all of a sudden you have these control options that lock your opponent out of these specific actions that might be usable. If you have an electric deck that uses paralysis, all of a sudden you can Sabrina something in, and you can paralyze it, and now it can't retreat. These changes diversify the two conditions, locking opponents into specific action instead of overlapping entirely. And by making both recoverable during the checkup adds a level of unpredictability and current which encourages strategic pivots or sacrifices. That's a cool thing about sleep is that it might last more than one turn as opposed to paralysis, which does the guaranteed one. And I think by having them both on the coin flip, there's still that level of luck and strategy that comes with it. Now on to poison. Currently, poison deals 10 damage per turn. It can only be cured by evolving or retreating. This is fine. This makes perfect sense. It's just a little bit of damage, every single turn they kind of have to switch out to get rid of. But what if badly poisoned was a thing? Like, if you take something, like Wheezing, Wheezing has the ability that, guarantees poison. But the second time he uses it, or it uses it, you flip a coin, and then on heads, the Pokemon becomes badly poisoned. And on badly poisoned, they take 20 damage per turn. So the original idea for burned was for Pokemon to take 20 damage per turn and recovers on a coin flip. But if we change it to badly poisoned, then they could take 20 damage per turn, do the checkup, and on heads that then get reverted back to regular poisoned. I think this would give, a lot of those dark cards, bigger threat potential, especially since some of them might have, lower damage output. Like with the eventual, Crobat down the line, I could see it, doing just, low amounts of damage, but with the chance of poison or something. And, that way that adds up over time. Something like that. That just leaves confusion. I don't like it. It's too unpredictable. Nullifying an attack entirely on a coin flip feels unbalanced, especially if games are already down to the wire. A battle between luck versus skill is always frustrating, so I'm choosing to avoid it by actively wanting to veto the condition. Now, instead, here I'm going to talk about some of the other more unique status conditions. Now, there's a bind effect that Arbok applies, with its move corner. And making this video, I realized that that effectively becomes the exact same thing as is new paralysis. Except with Arbok's corner, it's guaranteed and goes away after the next turn. So it's the effect is the new paralysis while functioning like the old paralysis. This enables it to be used consecutively. However, Arbok, has to be the one, that's active and continuously attacked to sustain the effect. And I think this is the big differentiator between it and paralysis. I want paralysis to change, but then, I didn't want this like bind condition from corner to feel redundant. But I think, as long as there's enough of a difference here of where Arbok has to continually attack, that's kind of the whole point, that it's different enough. And on top of that, I don't know if this is true or not. I haven't had enough, testing or playtime with this, but I don't know if the bind effect goes away on evolution. But if it does, I don't think it should. Now, there's also something else that I'd like to see more of on cards, and that is counter. Now, originally writing this video, I didn't realize that the counter effect already kind of existed. And then I got the Polyrath card. Like I hadn't gotten Polyrath before, and I didn't realize it did. I haven't seen anybody use this, so I had no idea. But I think, counter is just a neat condition to have, maybe on some of the more defensive mods, maybe as part of like the moves. Just something like what Polyrath has as an ability. And then, there's a couple others like Protect, on Dugtrio's Dig, and then I call this Silence that I think Vulpix does and Omastar. Here's a couple more effects that, I think we should see more often. Because status conditions, the whole point of them is, for control. And, that this isn't Magic the Gathering. Everything should have some level of control, as that's kind of part of the strategy. Is how do you, build up your army while also stopping your opponent from building up their army? That's literally the whole point. So why am I making this video? Now, this video started out actually as an idea to discuss some new cards I want to see, mostly some fire types, for the game. Specifically, I wanted to explore more options for another 3-stage fire line since we desperately need one. However, reading the in-game tips on status conditions got me thinking about how these effects could be expanded or rebalanced. So I decided to combine these ideas. Like take for instance the fact that fire decks rely heavily on Moltres EX or Blaine. But if we added something like the Chandelure line with that burn effect, I think that it could pair very well with something like Salazzle creating a strong, standard fire deck with a 2-stage and a 3-stage line. Alternatively, we could have another supporter in something like Flint just to help, some of those other cards that have the energy exhaust, like Base Charizard, Sanduscorch, and Flareon, in case people wanted to run something that, like in a no EX zone, and so they can't use Moltres EX. However, a counter-focused fire type like Turtonator could help with, some of that defensive versatility. The closest thing we have to it in terms of like maybe that scaling would be something like Magmar, but its damage output is kind of reliant on Blaine. So I think having something like Turtonator with the counter would be, very useful and be a good alternative to sometimes the potentially unreliable Kangaskhan. Additionally, we can obviously see the same thing in a metal deck. I like to see Ferrothorn come into play. I think that'd be very cool. Now, for sleep and paralysis, I think some good potential cards like these would be for these conditions would be something like a Miss Magius or a Hariyama. These would be very cool for some offensive and control strategies. I think Miss Magius could pair very well with Hypno on the bench, and I think Hariyama is just disruptive enough to be kind of a threat. Even though like it's not going to rely on sleep all that well. Now, as for poison, I think it'd be interesting to see some potential counterplay with it. Maybe, play off of the rivalry between Zangoose and Seviper. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, you have Zangoose, whose whole shtick is that it's like immune to poison, and its rival is Seviper, a poison type. Or, obviously, like I said earlier, we could introduce the badly poison to make some of the poison types bigger threats. Anyways, I have so many ideas bouncing around in my head and they overlap in weird ways, so I hope this video makes sense. Like I said earlier, this isn't Magic the Gathering, and you don't need to run blue just to have some control, you know, factors. So I think every type in TCG Pocket should be able to utilize some level of control effects. But obviously, these control effects need to feel unique and explicit and different enough that, pairs well with, whatever type that they're coming from. Fire types need burn on a solid three-stage line as an alternative to that energy overcharge or for Blaine. And paralysis shouldn't be overshadowed by sleep, so some of the lightning cards like Electros can at least have some value. And as for everything else, we'll just see what happens. So as always, thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think. I'm honest. Let me know what you guys think. I'm down to actually have some more ideas for some potential cards I'd love to see. So thanks for watching, and as always, stay frothy.